Welcome back, my name's Guy, and this is part 2 of a build I'm doing on a bathroom vanity. If you missed part 1, I'll leave a link over in the corner for you to take a look at that. This time, I'm going to show you how I built the drawers, how I did the edge banding, it's all shop made, how I did the drawer fronts, the door, and how I pre-finished all the plywood parts that aren't going to get painted. So there's a lot of ground to cover, so let's get to it. I'm starting to measure out for the size of the drawer boxes. Now, the slides I'm using are undermount epoxy Euro slides. They're inexpensive slides, but they'll work for this. So I know this opening is 7.5 inches tall. The manufacturer recommends losing 1/4 inch off the bottom and 5/8 inch off the top. So that's 7.5 minus 7/8 is 6 5/8. Better write that down. So as far as the width goes, now I've got 2 pieces of wood here. 2 pieces of plywood, and this is cut from the same piece of plywood that I'm going to be cutting the drawer sides from. Now the manufacturer recommends that you leave a 1/2 inch on either side, so a 1/2 inch on either side is 1 inch. So if I just measure this now, I'm getting 9 1/4 inches. So the piece that goes in between here needs to be 8 1/4 inches. So after I cut those 1/16 inch strips off that piece of maple on the table saw, I put some glue on them in a pretty decent amount. I want to make sure I get full coverage on it. I'm basically just waiting for glue to dry right now. As soon as these are dry to the touch, I'm actually going to put them on the plywood that I cut before for the drawer boxes with an iron. All right, that's it. I just need to do 2 more of these, and then we'll get the excess off of them. I'm over here at the router table, and I need to get rid of the excess edge banding. This is just one way to do it, and this is the way I'm going to do it on this project. So what I've got is I've got a spiral bit with the ball bearing on it and 2 auxiliary fences on my router table fence. There's also a rabbet that runs underneath here. This ball bearing is completely flush with these fences. I've also got a feather board. Now the feather board has to have a couple shims underneath it to raise it up. So what's going to happen is I've got this excess edge banding here, that's going to fit into that groove or that rabbet in the fence. The feather board is going to hold it in place, but I have to give some extra room for that other edge banding I still haven't cut off to get underneath there. Well, there's the edge banding in place. As you can see, it's all trimmed real nice. There's still a little bit, it's still just a tiny bit proud of that surface. So I'm just going to take my sanding block and go over that and make sure that there's nothing there to catch. Well, I've got all the drawer parts cut out, and I'm getting ready to start cutting the joinery for the drawers themselves. This is one of the fronts or the backs, doesn't really matter which one it is. And I'm going to be joining the sides of these with these. These are dominoes. These are very small dominoes. They're 4x20s. I call them baby dominoes. I'm actually going to be using the reference stops on my domino. All I'm going to do is go like this on the reference face, slide over until it hits that stop, make a plunge, go over the other side and do the same thing. And then when I do the sides, I can put it against a reference face and just use those reference tabs on there and put them in the exact same spot. It's a very good system. This goes really quickly. So there you have it, a drawer made with dominoes. Very easy to make, very strong. Measurements are right where I need them to be at 9¼ wide and 14 inches deep. So the next thing I need to start working on is the drawer fronts and the door for the piece. Well, here's the face frame, and the way this is designed is that the drawer faces are going to have a 1/4 inch overlay. The door is going to have a 1/4 inch overlay, except on this side where it's got a 1/2 inch overlay, because those are some hinges I have I want to use up. They're 1/2 inch overlay hinges. That's why all 3 of these pieces are different sizes. So I need to go back to my poplar and start pulling out the pieces that are going to make up all the rails and stiles for the drawer faces and the door itself. I'm getting ready to cut some grooves in the rails and stiles of the door and the drawer fronts. So I've got a combination blade set up in here, played around with my settings a little bit. I'm about 3/8 inch high, a little bit less than a 1/4 inch away from the fence. I'm just going to run it through once, flip it around, and run it through again, and that'll give me a perfectly centered groove. I've got all the grooves cut and all the rails and stiles for the drawer fronts and the door frame. So the next thing I'm going to work on is creating these, which are stub tenons on the rails that go into the stiles. And I've done this over on the table saw, and those just fit in here like this. Little hand pressure, and it's a nice tight joint. There's a little gap here on the bottom. That's okay. The piece is going to be painted. I can fill that little bit in later. Nobody's ever going to see it. But I'd rather have it hit the shoulders and bottom out than try to get that exactly on the bottom. It's just not going to be possible. And on a piece like this, it doesn't really matter. So let me take you over to the table saw and show you how I've got it set up to cut these. So what I've got is a 3/8 inch stacked dado set in my table saw. I've also got a sacrificial fence on my miter gauge. I just raised it up a little bit above the table, made a cut, made a mark on here, so now I know exactly where that's going to cut. Then I took one of the pieces and I only nibbled away like maybe a 1/16 of an inch going into here. But I just nibbled away and nibbled away and nibbled away, slowly raising the blade up until I got a perfect fit inside one of the stiles. After I did that, I set my stop block so I could get the actual depth of the cheek itself. So all that being said, all I have to do is take this like this, run it through, flip it over, run it through, flip it around, you get the idea, and create 2 stub tenons on either side of these rails. Well, I've got the MDF panel cut for the door and for the drawers, and everything dry fit, and everything went together very easily. So the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this off camera, is I'm going to glue all these up. There's really not much to see there. These look very blocky right now, and they're going to, and I knew that going in. But there will be an edge treatment that goes on here that'll quiet that down quite a bit. So the next thing I need to start working on after I glue these up are the top and bottom frames for this, and that'll help tie everything together. Well, I've got the top frame all clamped up, and I had to really crank it down to get all these joints closed, especially this last piece, which I knew was going to be difficult, but I've done it before. So once I got it cranked down and got all the joints closed, I backed off quite a bit on the clamps and then re-clamped them just enough to make sure they stayed closed, because I don't want to bow this piece at all. I'm going to make another one of these, but it's going to be made out of MDF. It's going to go underneath on the bottom. All it's really going to do is a supporting weight. There's really nothing structural to it at all. It's just going to be a little bit smaller than this by about, I think, 1.5 inches in width. So I'm going to go ahead and make that and glue it up. I'm not going to film it, but you'll get to see it once we start the rest of the process. So I got a real nice round over on this. Now I need to work on the top frame. So that's the profile I'm looking for on this. This will actually stick over the edge of that by 3/4 of an inch on the sides. And then there's going to be another piece of cove molding that goes underneath between the top and the side itself and the front of the cabinet. There's a shot of the piece. Again, this is all dry assembled, but it's sitting on the bottom frame, it's got the top frame on it. There's going to be a piece of molding, a cove molding that goes underneath right here. It's going to be 3/4 of an inch down and 1/2 inch thick. Again, that goes all the way around the front of the piece and the sides of the piece. It should look real nice. All right, what we're looking at here is almost all the equipment in my shop is covered up with plastic. If you look over here, I've got some panels put out on a sawhorse. We have a heat index of 105 today. It's extremely humid out. I am not going to be able to spray these outdoors. I need to spray the interior cabinet pieces and the drawers before I assemble anything. So I just wanted to show you this. I'm going to open up the garage door a crack, put a fan in the man door, try to get some cross ventilation. I'm going to have a organic vapors mask on. I'm going to do everything I can not to breathe any of this stuff in. I've done this before inside. I'm going to be okay. But I'm not going to videotape this. It can really mess up the camera. I've done it before. So I'll see you on the other side. So I ended up shooting 3 coats of water-based poly on this. It's a semi-gloss. I've got a 2000 grit sanding pad in my sander here. I'm just going to go over this once. It's just a real quick light pass, and that'll clean up all the fuzzies and make this really nice and smooth. So that's it for now. Next time I'm going to take this big pile of parts and glue them all together, and hopefully it's going to look like a bathroom vanity when I'm done. So as always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.